HMOs are going to be here to stay.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to evolve a little more. We're going to start looking at family HMOs, where you've got multi-generational pods share. And there's a project in London. I think it's called XO or something like that, where you have 2 separate self-contained apartments sharing 1 kitchen.
Oh, excellent.
So the sort of the things that aren't used that much during the day can be shared. So 2 apartments sharing one space.
That's a great idea. I didn't know about that scheme, and I'm going to have a look into that, because I've been really interested in the co-living, co-housing model since going to America, and obviously seeing how popular it is there, particularly in Manhattan. I saw, as I say, some really, really amazing co-living schemes. I'm actually going to go and be interviewing them at the Collective Old Oak in London, which is the largest co-living space in the world, and they have restaurants and bars and gym and library, and I'm in total agreement with you. We need more living space. People want more for their living space. They don't just want a bog standard house with a kitchen, a bathroom and a garden. They're happy to share certain aspects of their life. Their lifestyles are changing, and they want their buildings and properties to fit around those lifestyles. So it's almost people are getting a bit more picky and choosy, but I think there's some great opportunities there for kind of specializing in a niche, like you said about family sharing. This is a really interesting, because how many struggling families have we got in the UK that we've got families that are friends with each other that really consider that model, that type of model, and having an aspect of privacy and also the aspect of sharing and socializing too.
It's communal living. And it's how we would have probably lived together 500 years ago. Where necessity defined it. And we've just done a feasibility on a scheme in London where it's 30 bedrooms, and in essence it's 30 couples rooms.
Wow.
So in essence 60 people. And we've done the whole, there's a couple of shared kitchens, a gym. We've even designed in this live workspace. So if you are a young professional, instead of commuting into the city every day, you can work from home, but you're not working in your bedroom. There is a dedicated breakout space. And we sort of had this idea that you would actually start to see industry and small businesses forming in that space, and cross collaboration between residents starting to come up with ideas, and having that very almost slightly hippie idea of people living, working, surviving, growing together in one space.
I just wrote an article for the site actually about Castle Braidco, which is somewhere I stayed in Brooklyn, and it's a totally unique space, but it's an artist residence. And the idea there was they wanted people living together, working together, making together, creating, forming businesses, partnerships, and they have this most amazing community. And this building is so beautiful because they're all creating and making it and transforming it on a daily basis. But like you say, there's these little communities and businesses and networks that are happening within these buildings, which is fantastic.
We have one in Manchester. It's not a live space, it's a workspace in the old Granada studio, where it's quite knocked together.
I love it.
And it is quite knocked together, but you go in and you see all these little fledgling businesses, a videographer, and there's a really good coffee company in there. If they're still there, they do really good coffee. And there's a guy reupholstering furniture, and there's another, but they start talking to each other and helping each other and seeing opportunities and recommending each other, and it becomes a support community for business. That could work so well as a support community for residents as well.
I agree, and I know, as I say, I saw the artist space in New York, and I know the technology spaces and the startup houses are becoming more popular. I know I had a look at YouTube stars that are all sharing properties and documenting as they go. So I think there's huge leverage in this, and I think there's a lot of landlords that are perhaps panicking a little bit about, we've entered the student marketplace and we don't, everybody's into the student marketplace, so my property's sat empty and loads of voids. If you look at diversifying and look at looking at a niche and doing it well, doing it fantastically well, and offering the best within that marketplace, yes, you've got maybe a smaller marketplace to penetrate, but you can charge a premium for the services that you're offering.
You've just put me in mind. There's anecdotal evidence with a couple of my landlord clients that they get double voids. They get a male and female, or a gay couple living at the same time. And there seems to be this sense of people, if I moved to a new city and I was single and I didn't know anybody, I'd go to an HMO.
Yeah, of course.
Because it's a way to meet people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or if you're looking to meet a partner, and in a lot of cases, when people leave, it's because they're moving in together.
They're moving in together, yeah.
So we've one client who's looking at this idea of creating an intranet type, not dating, well, yeah, I suppose dating website, but everybody can put their profile up and say whether they're single or they're looking or they're interested, and it's sort of, and I joke about it, it's going to end up being like a bit like a Tinder hookup type site, but
Tinder for HMOs, well, I love that.
But actually, it's a great idea.
Yeah, it really is, because there's such a social aspect, and I think we're, as I say, I saw in America, and I think we're just hitting in on this now of it's not just people in a building together, it's a community, and that can grow, and when it grows, it can create something amazing, and it's only going to be beneficial to the building and the property and the residents and the overall investment.
Well, listen, we have started talking about doing specialised HMOs, so an over 50s HMO, a divorcees HMO. It's all very high level stuff, and we don't know how much market there is to support it, but with our more, how should we say, adventurous clients, they are sort of starting to ask, okay, what niche can we do to set ourselves apart from just, it's another bedroom. And it is sort of a case of, if I was 50 and for say working away for 3 months and wanted to do the HMO model, to be going into a house with a load of 21-year-olds probably wouldn't fit with my profile. And I suppose that's having that understanding if there is a market there to support your niche, and then embracing that.
Yeah, I think there's almost like a little crossover between the serviced accommodation model and the HMO model, and there maybe we're still trying to find our feet of the in between that, almost like you say, people like myself, like yourself, that work away and you don't want to sit in hotel rooms all the time.
It's sad.
But yeah, it is. But having an Airbnb is the same thing. It's sad going into shared accommodation and meeting other business people that are travelling, or startup entrepreneurs.
We do in Salford have quite a few of that happening, where they're media city, they're up here for maybe 6 months, they have a relocation budget, but they want something more than a hotel, but not a home. So it's somewhere where they can wash clothes and have a couple of changes of clothes, and they're maybe only there Monday to Thursday and they go home at the weekend and stuff. And that's becoming more and more, and it is sort of almost flipping across a little from being your standard HMO to being your service accommodation. We've one client who's toying with this idea of offering a turnkey service, so even a stocked fridge when you arrive, and a made up bed, and in the HMO, which is sort of, there is definitely opportunities in that sort of, well, it's a service accommodation in an HMO.
Yeah, but people are having to go push more. We've had a bit of a saturation with the HMO, like you said. I don't think it's going anywhere. But people have had to diversify a little bit, because traditionally it's been a bit lazy. Well, let's just let the students, and now we can't just let you can't just buy a house in a student market and it's going to let. It's a gamble.
Dying. There's too much money. It's dying.
I agree.
Because there's too much money on it.
Yeah, I agree.
So and I can't remember who it is, but there's somebody who's approaching universities and he's saying, you know what, I'll throw up a 300 unit student block here, and you recommend it to your students and you'll get a commission. And that's a business model. So they're just, it's a beautiful business model, because students are always coming, they're always going to want to stay in the best places, blah, blah, blah. So the traditional house share student-led market, it's on its way out, and it will continue to go on its way out. Maybe not in the next 5 years, but over the next 20 years.
I 100% agree with you, and that's how I entered into the marketplace originally, clearing up the empty student properties when coming along in September and they're all empty. So it was easy pickings for me, for LHA, to go and talk to those landlords and say, you've got voids, I'm going to help you. You're not going to meet a professional standard, but as we say, we're going to keep seeing this. So it's great tips for investors to look at diversifying and looking at the co-living model and taking lead, as I've written in the couple of articles I've done with Rob and the site recently. Have a look abroad at what they're doing. You've mentioned Europe, I've mentioned America. There are some really interesting takes on co-living that we can probably take lead from here.
It's really interesting you say that, because there's a bit of a psychological thing here, and this might just be to do with, we are Britain and we've always been out on our own away from Europe. We're quite bad at living in high density. If you even go to Paris and look at the tower blocks, some people they live their whole lives on top of each other, you know, and they're quite. And you go to Hong Kong and it's even, you know, you have 3 generations of the same family living in a 2-bedroom. But in Britain, we don't really do it that well, and it almost seems to be like a natural progression of you leave home, you maybe move into a flat or an apartment, but your aspiration is to get out of a flat, and you almost step up the hierarchy. If you go to your terraced house, then your townhouse, then your semi, then your detached, and that's something that's going to be interesting to see if multi-communal living will work. Interestingly though, we are a hugely diverse population, and we're a very international population, especially go to the major cities. You know, you walk around Manchester, you don't meet many Mancs. Well, look at me, I live in Manchester and I've got a Manc. You know, and it's sort of it's interesting, and I remember reading a couple of theories in this whole idea of why, you know, even if you look at a very common phrase of this is sort of an Englishman's country garden. You know, we have this aspiration of my semi-detached, my front garden set back from the road, my back garden, my little bit of land, my little bit of dirt, sort of thing, and that's sort of it does set us apart as a nation from a lot of the rest of Europe, in that you look all across Eastern Europe, you look all across a lot of the major cities in France, where, you know, we're not talking skyscraper blocks, but 4-story walk-ups where you do have 4 different apartments and people live their whole life in them, and it's just, you know, it's normal. Whereas for us, that's not particularly normal.
It's going to be interesting to see how it develops over the next few years and where we go with that, and I'm excited about the co-living model here, I really am.